Welcome to another episode of this new podcast that I started called A Loving Observation of Life. And I want to read what I wrote down in the pod information because I didn't do that in episode 1. So I kind of started the channel Dimensions of Love in on the platform YouTube. So that was my start. So I really wanted to give back to the platform that allowed me to reach out to all of you and to share this love and this inner guidance and love that I received when I was in a difficult place in my life. So I wanted to start with this pod information, and we're going to talk about different observations of life. Okay, so we all have our own story and our unique signature of our soul's essence, which becomes a blessing when we finally see ourselves clearly. So this special story we all carry is worth sharing, because in the past many individuals have missed the chance, but now we have the privilege to do so thanks to the technology available in this current era of sharing and technology that is just helping us so much into doing this. So when we begin to understand ourselves better, we start to understand the world and others also. So that's why I created my YouTube channel when I went through my awakening back in 2018. And back then what happened was that I actually stopped using all technologies and I just unplugged myself from everything, because I received so many downloads. And I'm going to do a more episode on channeling in itself, but just to take it more simple here is I just needed to shut off the world in order to hear that inner voice, to hear where does this come from, what is happening, am I actually gone crazy? But we all kind of, it just feels like we're going crazy when we're going through it. And when we reach to the other side, we kind of notice that we're not crazy now, we were actually crazy before. So it's this paradox and this big difference of these both aspects. If you're picking up sound from the background, my daughter is at home in her room and she's getting frustrated with her technology, but I'm going to continue this recording. And if I'm going to continue reading here on the pod information that I wrote down, is that when we're sharing the journey, we can connect more personally, and that's what I'm aiming to do in this podcast, to be more, because when I'm sharing downloads, it's not personal, it's not connecting. And now more than ever, when we are connecting in this way, I just have to put a charger in here, sorry. But when we're connecting in this way, we can kind of feel the authenticity, because in the current state of the world right now, it's been masks and we haven't seen each other so clearly, so it's natural that there's a feeling of not trusting. And I've got this so many times in my downloads, that is always a confirmation that we are truly having this difficulty of recognizing, is the other honest? Because I feel many of you that are here and that are listening to this podcast are at some level been here many lifetimes. Even if you haven't been here, you've been in different planets and galaxies, so you're very advanced. And you know, even if you don't feel like you know, you truly deep inside of you know. That's what draw you here. That's why we're connecting. And I kind of want to help you all relax into that, because it is overwhelming in itself to awaken, but have this inner knowledge that you know more, but you don't know why you know it or where it's coming from. Is it you? What is it? It just, there's so many questions that are arising that wants to be answered, and sometimes the answer is not an answer. It just is. And that's very hard. That's when the mind is like, okay, you just dropped me off here and I can't continue further on this path. You kind of have to go alone, because the mind doesn't know what to do there. It's so unfamiliar. So thank you. Wherever you're hearing these words, I just want to say thank you for being open enough for yourself to even receive these words. So thank you. And with this podcast information, you can also go and read it in the actual pod on my YouTube page. But what I want to do here is just to remind, I feel like today's topic or subject that we are going to be talking about is when you're going through this awakening, or all of a sudden you're more conscious than you were before. And there's so much information out there. I mean, so much. And if we follow the mind, especially the more advanced you are, the more the mind will try to trick you and make you stop into doing all kinds of things that you don't need these things. You don't have to do these things, but the mind will kind of try to block your path. And sometimes one can perceive this as, oh, it's something bad, it's against me. How am I supposed to handle all of this? And I just want to remind you here that even though that it might feel difficult, because it truly is difficult to be blocked, but there's an inner calling. Where is it calling you? You have no idea. Are you supposed to walk these steps? Are you supposed to do all of these things? I want to remind you, whatever it is that you're doing, if you're listening to a podcast, if you're watching someone that is motivating you, if you're following a guru, if you are doing a different alternative medicine, whatever it is, there's just such a broad perspective in all of this direction that one can go into spirituality, no matter from which angle you're entering, is exactly perfect for you. So even if you're ending up not even being on that path, it will still be valid. See, usually when we see all of these people that have a great life, and just everything that they're doing is so great, and different motivational speaker will say, never follow someone just what they say, follow someone which lives are a living example of success. And I would like to say in those spaces that is not always true, because you might follow every step in that formula and you will still not have that life, or you will follow it and you will have that life, but it will not even be the life that you're meant to have, because the ego hijacked your experience, and now you're actually having to do something that you necessarily don't have to go through. So you might come back again. And it's very hard to know how you're supposed to end different things and what you're supposed to start to do. And I can definitely feel you in that difficulty of having so many things, but you can't commit fully to it because you don't know. It's just everything at once, because when you awaken, it's like all of your past life, everything that you knew is with you, but you can't express it. It's like someone tells you, do this kind of yoga and it's going to help you, and you're starting to do it and you're like, no, this is not it. And it's not, no, this is not it, the ego resisting. It's like you've done it before and you've been there before. I don't know how to explain it more simple than the teachings of, if you're familiar with this, of Ramana Maharshi. He just had a sudden awakening, and he wasn't a rich man or anything, and he couldn't even write. So he was none of those things. But when he awakened, he said, like, he didn't need to even have a teacher, because he probably had that in his past life. So he didn't need to learn to read. All of those things were not necessary for him to do in this lifetime that he had, because he's already completed those steps in his past life. So when we see a person and we're going through an awakening, we have to remember that a person might be, or it's not even a person, the soul expression, the essence, the consciousness can be a very evolved. So we cannot judge just because we know something to be better than the other, because the other might awaken and have done all the steps except for one just step. And here you are seeing and knowing a lot, but this is what you're supposed to see in this lifetime, but you have a lot of more steps to go in different lives. So the point is, we shouldn't mix each other into deciding of what is good, what is a good life now, because truly your life that you're living right now is good enough. Everything that you're doing right now is good enough. The ego just keep telling you that that's not true, and that's not the case. But that's far from the truth, because you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You already know this. So wherever you are in life, even if this is the first time that you're hearing these kind of words, like, what do you mean this is already, we already know this? It's like, the simplest way is to describe it is, we might grow to a height and then we stop. But we can always in life decide how much we want to eat. So our roundness, we can decide if we are going to be slim or if we are going to be full. But our height, it comes to a point where we cannot reach a higher height. Okay, so that's just in our physical body. So if we understand it the same way as your signature from your soul has already, it's predestined, so it's already decided what you're supposed to do in this lifetime compared to what you've done before and where you are. So this is already decided with your spiritual guide and your spiritual team. So it's good if we can just ease into it, because I feel like human beings, especially in the woke society, it's like deciding of what is real good woke and what is not. And then we're having trends, but they are trends in a woke society. Like, this is how you look when and eat and act when you're awake, but when you're sleeping you're doing this thing. And we start to judge these things when none of these are true. Because if you're truly awake, you know that sometimes you fall asleep. Even if you are conscious, sometimes consciousness rests. That meaning you can't be fully conscious in a whole day. We can't. We can be conscious in what we're doing from a moment to moment, but there are moment to moment where those limits are very loosely there. So consciousness shifts and changes. So to believe that when you're conscious, you're going to be conscious your whole day and your whole life, that's not true. Consciousness, it's a flow. It just happens naturally. And this is a reminder that wherever you are, and no matter how difficult it can be, to just, and this is very hard, to let go of all those preconceived, because there are just notions. All of them just come and go like the ebb and the flow. And to understand that it's different layers. And if you're in the higher layer of consciousness, naturally you will gravitate towards things. Because if I'm going to say from my story, from when I was in my sleeping state, in this dream, into being conscious, I was a very different person. Like, and I can't even say that I was a person then, or that I'm even a person now, because they're so different. Anything can happen in the sleeping state when the person is not conscious. Energies can influence that a lot. Of course, now, because I'm conscious, I can see those energies that want to influence don't have the same power, because I have my boundaries set. So I can see them when they're entering, what their purpose is and what they're trying to do. And even then, I'm not interfering, because everything is in the law of nature. When you follow the law of nature, you can never fail. Is when you are deviating from that path and want to do things that are in your selfish needs. Marcus, am I saying it right? Do I have his book here? Yeah. It's good that I have the camera here too. This is good. The Meditation of Marcus Aurelius. Am I saying his name right? I just love the way that he was. Just it's a stoic wisdom, and he talks a lot about this nature's flow and breaking into it, and that I agree with a lot here, because If we're going against ourselves, we're going in the direction of ego, and that's when we're suffering. That's the most of human suffering is there. And it is in our patterns and this repetition of what keeps happening. So if we observe life as life is, and we let and allow life to unfold the way that it wants to, everything kind of becomes very beautiful. But when we are holding on too tight, and when we are being stubborn and we're being in our mind, we can't perceive the clearness of the water, you know? When the water is not clear, we can't perceive the picture right, basically. So I want to say here with that everything has a beginning and an ending. And I want to talk about the 8th sphere. I don't know if you've heard of this, but they usually talk about this, that the extreme form of evil, which they will call black magic, can and disappear in the Atlantic epochs. Okay, so basically the same way here is that everything is in different layers. And I want to speak of this because in every layer of consciousness, where you are, so where others and where you are, where different beings in different dimensions, everything has its beginning and ending and how it is evolving. And in every perspective, whether you are in the perspective of angels and demons, whether you are in the perspective of the higher realms where just there's consciousness, ultimate bliss, there's nothing else, both of them are truths, but all of them are truths in different layers. So for an example, now I took two extremes, the highest and the lowest, but let's just say let's just keep it in the middle and very simple. As a human being, if you have some mental issues and you would feel like someone is stalking you, and that feeling is real, and we can create with our mind, even if there actually wasn't a person stalking you, we create with our mind that everything that happens in the body, as if someone would stalk you, will be the same impact in your body. So it's all measured that it actually happens. So even though that it's not technically true, in a different layer, it is absolutely true, because that feeling of being stalked and that adrenaline in the body that was released, that stress, that tension in that time was real. And maybe the person goes through treatments, or maybe even goes through different doctors and just whatever psychologist that will help this person to, like, okay, you don't have anyone, even if they will receive a deeper level of more consciousness into that there was no one stalking them, and then they would find why that happened. Still, it will not take away that in that moment when that person felt like someone was stalking them, that was the truth. So when we see it in this way, it's more easier to understand that there are different layers of truth depending on where you are. So in every consciousness, wherever you are, everything that helped you to develop or to understand something, even though that you might agree with it in one moment and then disagree with it in another moment, it's just your consciousness shifting and your understanding of it. And we have to be careful here, because the ego also wants to come in, especially if you have resistance to something or if it's very difficult for you to listen, like your ego is getting upset when he hears a specific tone of music, like you put on classical music and it's just something inside of you just wants to run away, or if you're listening to a teacher and everything that they are saying is annoying you, that is actually something that will activate you mostly. And sometimes we just want to go where we feel comfortable, or where we hear something that is confirming what our mind has already set up in this illusion of how it should be. So if we can be open enough to allow ourselves to explore these different avenues and these different dimensions in this way, surely our consciousness and our understanding will be deeper. So even though if I was very unconscious, at one point of time I also smoked cigarettes, and today I can't even resonate with that. So even if we are completely unconscious and doing stuff, that was needed at that time. And it's not like I didn't quit, because there was no one that quit. It's just something that was supposed to end and it ended. So I don't see it as that's just the ego again wanting to give itself a reward. I did that. I succeeded. No, it's just consciousness being consciousness. Everything is the way that it's supposed to be. And we create with our mind. We believe with our mind. But we need to let it flow. And if I go back to this 8th sphere, why I want to mention this is because it's called, the state is called avicii, which means without wave. So it refers to the lowest level of what would you call it, like hell, and it's called naraka, and it's a like self-serving, and these souls are from the lower animalistic layers of consciousness. So when souls get here, so yeah, you can actually fall down very deep depending on how unconscious you want to go and what kind of being you are, where you are in the development stages, because consciousness is one, okay? It's just different parts that are playing a part in the whole play, so to speak. So it is kind of like an evolution there also, because souls that get here, they get cast back, and then they have to participate in the evolution again. So after a whole round of evolution, so-called one breath of Brahma, as they call it, they then return as the lowmost entity. So nobody can never fail. We can just drop down to the lowest, and then we begin from the beginning. And then every entity works itself up from there, and every soul and consciousness, and ultimately we are one, and we are collaborating with each other. So there's always importance to stay balanced and find alignment. And if one feels fear of hearing about the 8th sphere, whatever arises, it's all natural. We're all in different layers. What I want to say with all of this, especially in this episode, is what I want you to take from this is that no matter where we are and whatever human being that you, or entity, or whatever that you will meet, all of it is created from the mind. We create together from the mind, so we connect. So I'm connecting with all that has open minds and open hearts. So it doesn't have to mean that your heart is open now. It might mean that your heart will open in this lifetime. It can also be connecting to another person that listens to these words and it's completely open in their heart, and they are receiving me fully as I'm receiving them. So this is the same thing that happens, and I want you to feel always with your heart everything that you hear, and allow it to be there, and understand that even though someone looks very unconscious, you don't know how advanced that soul is. I can say that from my own experience, that all of this knowledge that are starting to enter, I never knew of. And I feel called to share my gifts with the world, to share this authentic view of where I stand. And what I hope from this is that whatever you take from this is that you're growing in your understanding that everything is okay. Everything truly is okay. Wherever you are, however you're perceiving this, and whatever the ego is doing, and patterns and society, whatever it is, even entities, everything is okay. You're always taken care of, because that is the true beauty of an observation of life. Because life always takes care of itself. It's when we interfere that we are causing ourselves pain. And not to punish ourselves, but to just remind ourselves that all is well. So that's all for this episode. So have a wonderful day. And I'm always sending love your way. Bye.